Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Crimson Desert just received another pretty packed update. The first change I want to talk about is the new quests category inside the knowledge system, because this is actually one of those additions that can make a big difference once you start trying to keep track of everything you have done. The new category is split into 8 different areas. You have main quests, faction quests, investigation quests, research quests, daily life quests, guide, archive records, and constellations. That gives quest-related knowledge a much clearer home instead of having it mixed into everything else. And there's another nice detail here. Some of these knowledge entries will be awarded retroactively if you have already completed the related quest. So for players who have already put a lot of hours into Crimson Desert, you should not have to go back and repeat a bunch of content just because the knowledge system has been reorganized. If you already did the quest that qualifies for one of those entries, the game can recognize that progress and give you the knowledge afterward. That is a pretty sensible way to introduce a new category without making existing players feel like they are being punished for progressing before the change. There is another resource change that is worth keeping in mind. Research no longer requires silver. It now uses camp funds instead. That changes the way research ties into your overall camp management, and it also means the game is separating those two currencies a little more clearly. Depending on how you tend to spend your silver, this could make research feel a lot less restrictive. Then we have a handful of fixes related to trading. There was an issue where high-value trade goods could be stacked and loaded in quantities of up to 100, which obviously was not working the way it was supposed to. There was also a problem where merchants would sometimes fail to appear at trading stalls. Those are exactly the kinds of bugs that can be easy to overlook until you are actually trying to make use of the system, so getting those cleaned up should make trading more reliable. Pearl Abyss also changed the location of Baker's Note from the quest called Haverson's Request, which should help with that particular objective. The knowledge system has also been adjusted so that certain animal knowledge can now be obtained by picking the animal up instead of killing it. I really like that change because it gives a little more flexibility to the way you interact with the world. Not every creature encounter needs to end with something getting taken out, just so you can complete a knowledge entry. Some boss knowledge descriptions have also been cleaned up, so the information itself should be clearer. Another nice quality of life change is at the stable. Horse gear can now be equipped directly there. That sounds simple, and it is, but these are the sorts of changes you start appreciating pretty quickly because they remove an unnecessary trip through menus or extra steps when you are already managing your mount. There are also several quest fixes that should help with some very specific progression problems. For example, the pensive statues at Jijong Temple could sometimes revert to their unrepaired state while you were progressing through that quest. That issue has been fixed. The kiln repair objective in Chapter 4, under the Price of Knowledge and then Mysterious Pot at the Kilnden Workshop, has also been adjusted. The broken pieces of the kiln can now be reattached using Force Current. That should make the interaction behave more consistently instead of leaving you wondering whether you missed some required action. There was also a problem where the submission to defeat enemies around the cabin would not appear near Cairn House. That has been fixed, along with another knowledge issue involving Mysterious Invitation. Now that entry can be obtained after completing Read the Memory beneath Delesia Castle. The controls are probably where a lot of players are going to notice a difference immediately, because lock-on camera behavior has been expanded. Previously, the setting was basically an on or off choice. Now there are 3 options called Manual, Semi-Auto, and Auto. Manual works like the previous enabled setting. When you are locked onto a target, you can still rotate the camera with the right stick or mouse. Semi-auto gives you a limited amount of camera movement while lock-on is active, so you get some control, but the camera stays more focused on the target. Then there's auto, which prevents you from rotating the camera with the right stick or mouse while lock-on is enabled. That matches the previous disabled behavior. This is a nice addition because people have very different preferences when it comes to lock-on systems. Some players want complete control, others want the camera to stay focused on the enemy, and there are plenty of people somewhere in between. Having 3 choices is much better than forcing everyone into the same setup. There was also a separate issue where ranged weapons could fail to lock onto targets while you were riding a mount under certain conditions. That has been fixed. The quick slot arrow animation has also been corrected because it could move in a way that looked unnatural. Moving into combat and general movement, several odd behavior problems have been cleaned up. Certain special mounts could get stuck when trying to cross low ledges, which sounds like one of those moments where you stop, turn the mount around, try another angle, and suddenly wonder why a tiny piece of terrain is winning the fight. Players could also get blocked from climbing through windows even when nothing was actually preventing them from climbing. That has been fixed too. And then there is Sir Catfish, who could repeatedly perform a specific action in the same location under certain circumstances. That behavior has been corrected. The map has also received a useful visual adjustment. Areas that you reveal by ringing the bell can now be distinguished from areas you have directly explored yourself. That should make the map easier to read, especially when you are trying to understand which parts of the world you have genuinely traveled through and which areas were revealed through that system. On the graphics side, Pearl Abyss has fixed unstable indoor lighting effects in certain situations. There was also a camera jitter issue that could show up when the game was running at low frame rates. That has been addressed as well. One of the more important technical fixes involves frame generation. The developers fixed a rendering corruption problem that could happen when FSR frame generation or XeSS frame generation was enabled on certain lower-end graphics cards, including the GTX 1060. That is a welcome fix for anyone using older hardware and trying to get smoother performance without dealing with broken visuals. Localization has also received attention, with various translation errors corrected and localization quality improved across the supported languages. Then we get to the long list of other fixes, and there are quite a few of them. There was an issue where the game could occasionally send you back to the title screen when you revived at a revival point. That should no longer happen. Another strange audio problem involved help pop-ups. When you fast-forwarded through a cutscene, the voiceover for a help pop-up could also play at a higher speed. That has been fixed. Workers could stop functioning correctly after loading a save file, and that has also been addressed. Regular NPCs could sometimes appear inside areas that were supposed to be blocked off, which should now be fixed as well. There were some animation problems involving characters riding mounts. The game could also send a character into a broken Abyss loop at the Abyss Skyloop Bridge, which is probably not exactly the shortcut anyone was looking for. The time-lapse effect could fail to activate after using focus mode. Certain pieces of equipment could visually clip through the character. Azirian had some abnormal movement behavior. All of those have fixes included here. There was also a progression blocker tied to the quest Time to Face Justice. If you switch to Unka before meeting Torstein, progression could become stuck. That has been corrected. The heater had an issue where multiple oil canisters could occupy the same slot. Shops and dye houses could show a shield even with preview only selected enabled after equipping dual-wielded weapons. And Abyss Gear skill sound effects could still play even when their volume had been turned all the way down. Those problems are all addressed in this update. Now, there are still some known issues that Pearl Abyss has not resolved yet, so worth knowing about those before assuming everything has been fixed. Fishing in certain areas can still result in caught fish being unable to move. Greymane faction quests can still fail to progress when playing as Damian or Unka. There is also an evasion control problem where setting the option to hold can leave the default evasion key active even after you change the assigned key. NPCs that are required for quest progression still cannot ride together on legendary animal mounts. Mac players have a couple of platform-specific problems too. At certain resolutions, the cursor can fail to match the actual furniture placement point when using a keyboard and mouse. The colorblind filter can also fail to apply to the user interface, even when colorblind mode is enabled. On PlayStation, the screen can freeze if you enter characters too quickly while using the virtual keyboard to name a pet or horse. Pearl Abyss specifically advises entering the characters more slowly with brief pauses, and there is one GTX 1060 issue that is still listed separately. On those GPUs, enabling FSR upscaling, together with frame generation, can cause the screen to appear white. So while the patch fixes a rendering problem involving frame generation on certain lower-end hardware, GTX 1060 owners still have a separate known issue to be aware of. There is also a problem with FSR4 upscaling during rain. In rainy environments, the rain may disappear or the screen can become blurry or distorted. That is still on the known issues list as well. So overall, this update is really about tightening up the experience rather than changing what Crimson Desert fundamentally is. The knowledge system is cleaner, research now uses camp funds, horse gear management is easier, lock-on camera control is much more flexible, the map gives you better information, and there is a long list of fixes covering quests, movement, graphics, sound, workers, NPCs, mounts, and progression. What stands out to me is the amount of attention being given to problems that might not show up for every player, but become very noticeable when they do happen. A broken quest trigger, a worker that stops functioning after loading a save, a camera that shakes at low frame rates, or a progression lock can completely interrupt a play session. Fixing those things may not look exciting in a list of changes, but they can make the game feel much more consistent the next time you play. And with the new knowledge category, it is also nice to see the developers thinking about players who have already completed content. Getting some of that knowledge retroactively means the system can improve without forcing everyone to redo old quests. So that is the full rundown of this latest Crimson Desert update. from the new knowledge organization and research changes, all the way through the camera settings, performance fixes, quest corrections, animation problems, and the remaining known issues that are still being worked on. But